Matushka, if you bless something, then no matter what it is, it always takes a turn for the better, I told her, having experienced the truth of these words many times. I feel especially sorry for everyone, and I pray to the Mother of God for everyone. And truly the Mother of God blessed all those who had received the blessing of Schemanun and Macaria. I will never abandon my people, she said. I will always pray to the Mother of God and the Savior for them. The Heavenly Queen will illumine many of their simplicity. She will grant great grace to those who venerate her and will pray to the Savior for them. 2. Appearances of saints. When one was with Schemanun Macaria, one clearly perceived that she was an earthly angel and a heavenly person. Two worlds met in her, the heavenly realm and the earthly. She stood beyond the bounds of these two worlds and witnessed to us, sinful people, about the invisible world, our heavenly fatherland, and helped us to step onto the path that leads to the kingdom of God. The Lord himself, receiving the ascetic's prayers, even drew back the curtain before the unseen world for those people who surrounded her, in order to give them a guiding thread and to inspire them to aim for the salvific life. One old acquaintance of Matushka's, her neighbor from her village, Clara, came to her house for many years and sold her milk. Schemanun Macaria always felt sorry for her and helped her with money, for a trip to the health resort, for the purchase of a calf or a new refrigerator. Clara was a practical person, far from the church. She considered Matushka's grace-filled healing to be nothing special. One day the Lord vouchsafed her to have the following dream. Early in the morning she stood in the edge of the ravine near her house and saw many, many saints in heavenly garments standing near the spring. One of them, a young woman, walked along the stream into which the water from the spring flowed, and sang, "The little stream flows eastward." Clara awoke from this loud singing. When I heard about this dream, I asked Matushka, "Is it true that the saints come to your spring?" "They serve here," she answered. "They know that I grieve when I am deprived of church services, and so they come to serve." "And who was the woman who walked along the stream?" I asked her again. "Great Martyr Catherine. They were all young and beautiful there, and they all walked along the stream." In latter years the villagers were especially careless towards the spring, although they all drank its water. Clara's brother-in-law, too lazy to carry water up the hill, bought an electric pump, lowered it into the spring, and pumped water from it for himself and his animals. Possibly this dream was addressed to him. One day I said, "What good water there is in your spring, Matushka. One can never drink enough of it." The Mother of God says that if no one would put anything into the spring, then it would have healing qualities. She sanctifies it every week. When I am no longer here, come and take water from it, and it will help you. I pray very hard that the prophet Elias would correct it. Matushka said, "The spring long bore the name of this saint, and a chapel stood there." "Has Elias the prophet ever been to see you, Matushka?" I asked her. "They all come for a little while," she answered. "And who was with you last?" "Saint Simeon the God Receiver. They say, 'What bad legs you have.'" "When was he here?" I probed. "Less than a week ago." Another time Schemanun Macaria told me, "I am with them often." "With whom? The heavenly hosts? The angels?" "Not only with the angels, but also with the saints, and with those whom I knew earlier, that is, with the reposed who knew her in life." One Lydia came to work for Schemanun Macaria. She was a woman of godly appearance, who had lived a difficult life. She brought with her many church service books and read them extensively every day. I told them, the heavenly beings, "Now I have a reliable one who prays." But they told me, "Matushka, do not particularly rely on her. She is good, but she has lost the divine root." After some time passed, Lydia showed her worst side, and she had to be released from her duties. Schemanun Macaria's spiritual sight was so finely tuned that she saw the representatives of the invisible world as easily as we see one another. She saw the Sovereign Lady, the saints of God, people's souls, including those of the dead, and she saw evil spirits. In answer to my question, she confirmed that she sees all of this with her spiritual eyes. She related, "How many times have I seen the night as bright as the day, and some kind of people walking upon a staircase?" The Bible talks about precisely this sort of vision. Jacob had this miraculous vision in a dream. He beheld a ladder that joined the heavens with the earth, on which the angels of God descended to earth and ascended to heaven. Genesis 28:12. The holy God-pleasers, she said, are not with us in body, but they save us in spirit. If we, by we she means those of us who were with her, were worthy, they would appear even to us. These miraculous visions strengthened Matushka in her labors of prayer and asceticism, and the holy God-pleasers appeared in order to support her in the great and incredibly difficult labors that she performed. Matushka told us of these appearances a number of times. Her spiritual protectors, whose names she bore, came to her more than once. Macarius the Great came. He was wearing a cap like a garland, and he brought some prosphora, cut into pieces, and laid out a tablecloth. He placed a small dish on the table, put a little of the prosphora into it, and said, "Eat." But I was afraid and clung to the wall. I only took one. Such an aroma, so tasty. It's a pity that I didn't take it all. Another time Matushka Macaria related the words of the saint. Matushka, it will not become easier for you. You will not be cured at all until you come to heaven. Schemanun Macaria always received great sympathy from the dwellers of heaven and advice on how to carry her life's podvig. 4 years ago, in 1982, St. Seraphim of Sarov came. He had his knapsack with him. He sat on the bench near the bed and said, "You need to sleep more. You need to sleep 6 hours, otherwise you will grow weak." She answered the saint, "If I sleep that much, I will not have time to read my prayer rule and bless the water and oil." She told me about this on September 16, 1986. 3. A vision of divine light. The time has arrived to tell of 2 visions that occurred in the Schemanun's house. Here is what she said of the first. Candles bound with ribbons fell from heaven and burned with fire. They were large candles, like the ones that the acolyte brings out during the services at the cherubic hymn. The meaning of this vision has remained a mystery to me, and I never found an explanation for it. But the second, which occurred on the 4th or 5th of February 1989, witnessed by a priest who was staying with Matushka at the time, requires a more detailed description. Before the vision, evil spirits had been continually wreaking havoc for a long time. They brought much grief to Schemanun Macaria and obstructed the fulfillment of her duties. Matushka prayed to the holy God-pleasers and to the heavenly queen to deliver her from their attacks. The saints were here, she said, and they said, "You asked the Lord to sanctify the house himself." I prayed to God, I don't know how hard. Then, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, a radiance illuminated the house. Such an interesting light, so bright. Oh, what a light there was, all golden. You could even find a bead on the floor, it was such a bright light. And a fragrance, not like incense, but like oil, during anointing, filled the house. For 3 days it was so easy, so good here. I forgot all of my illnesses. Then it all passed. Matushka ecstatically told me about this vision several times over the course of 4 days, and I exultingly beheld her blessed face on which shone the reflection of unearthly joy. This is what priest Nicholas, who was in Mother Macaria's house, told of the divine light. He was sleeping behind the divider when he suddenly woke up, looked toward the side of the room where Matushka was, in the space between the brick oven and the divider, but he was afraid to come out. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. At first the light was dim, but then an extremely bright, golden fiery light poured into the house, and it was blinding. You couldn't even look at it. It was a very bright light. In connection with this, we recall a similar phenomenon that occurred through the prayers of St. Seraphim of Sarov and was recorded by N.A. Motovilov. Lord, the saint prayed then, grant him, Motovilov, to see clearly with his bodily eyes that descent of thy Spirit which thou grantest to thy servants when thou art pleased to appear in the light of thy magnificent glory. So that the reader might better comprehend what mercy Schemanun Macaria was worthy of that night, I will cite yet another story from the life of Matushka's contemporary, the recently canonized Saint Silouan of Mount Athos, 1938. Uncreated divine light is by its nature something quite different from physical light. When contemplating it, one first of all feels the presence of the living God that envelopes one entirely. One sees in spirit the unseeable, breathes him, and is entirely within him. To this incomprehensible, all-encompassing feeling of the living God is joined the vision of light, entirely different in nature from physical light. The man himself then dwells in the light and becomes light unto it, is inspired by it, and feels neither his own material existence nor the material world. Divine light can appear under any conditions, in the dark of night or the light of day. God's good will may visit one in such a manner as to preserve the awareness of the body and the immediate surroundings. Then the man may, with open eyes, see two worlds simultaneously, the physical and the divine. Chapter 4. Assailed by the forces of evil. But I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how am I straitened till it be accomplished? Luke 12:50. 1. Attacks from the evil one. God does not give great gifts without great temptations, said the Christian ascetic St. Isaac the Syrian. So did Schemanun Macaria also undergo many strong and multifaceted temptations and persecutions from the devil, his servants and fulfillers of his will, especially during the latter years of her life. Thieves even came to her house with evil intentions and troubled the already troubled life of Matushka. The first time they came, it was the commemoration day of St. Alexander Nevsky, November 23rd, December 6th, 1987, at 6 in the morning. The day before, Matushka had warned Zenaida and Irina, who were staying there doing housework, "I am frightened. Protect me in the house. Do not go outside. My heart is very heavy. Something is going to happen." The caregivers did not heed her words. "Why should I sit around with you?" Zenaida said dubiously. A few hours did not pass before the caregivers had already forgotten Matushka's warning. Early in the morning, one of them went to the outhouse without closing the door to the house behind her. The robbers were waiting for her outside. They grabbed the woman, pushed her into the house, and struck her several times in the face as a threat, so that she would remain silent. Schemanun Macaria recalled one incident. "I only cried, 'Michael the Archangel, if it be so judged, save me.' One of the robbers came up to me and said, 'Grandma, live on,' and did not touch me a bit. He only said, 'Turn aside, Grandma, turn aside.' But I said, 'My little child, I will give you whatever there is myself.' Then he said, 'You are sick, I will take it myself.' But I lay there pressed against the wall. 'Well, my little child,' I said to him, 'I am lying as it is on one rib. I'll lie this way until you finish your work here.' They searched the entire bed, thinking that they would find money under the mattress. Then they would take one sack or another from under the bed, tear it open, and there would be soap, kerchiefs, and paper napkins. 'Grandma, why do you have only soap and paper?' they asked in great disappointment. They found a wallet on the head of the bed and took another one from the trunk. Zinka and Irinka were trembling like aspen leaves in bad weather. As the robbers left, they each put an overshoe made of bast on one foot and a boot on the other, so that they would not be discovered by their footprints. Mother Macaria related this with tears in her eyes. Why did they come with knives? I would have given it to them without that. Money means nothing to me. It is all dust. They just came and took it, but anyway, it won't be for long. All the same, they will only use it for drink." Another time, Schemanun Macaria warned her old experienced caregiver Maria, "You will let in a thief." And this did happen. In broad daylight, a thief broke into the house and, threatening with a knife, demanded money. They gave him the purse, and he ran outside. Hearing Maria's cries for help, the neighbors, who saw the man running down the street, called the police. The police searched for the robber for several days, and when they caught him, it came out that he had been tried 4 times for crimes. "What a fright," Matushka said. "They came twice, then a 3rd time, and I just lay there like one dead." Gypsies came many times attempting to penetrate into the house through cunning or force. One day they succeeded. Matushka, sensing the impending danger, warned her caregivers of it beforehand. "My heart is terribly heavy. Something bad is going to happen." 10 people broke into the house, she told me afterwards. Although they're women, they would still stab you to death. But the gypsy woman stroked my head. "You are good. You just lie sick." They ransacked the bed, took the icon of the Smolensk Mother of God and the purse with money, and left. This was in December of 1987. At first I marveled, why did the Lord not guard the Schemanun from the robbers? Then I noticed that the caregivers not only did not ask forgiveness of Matushka for their inattention and heedlessness, but even took out their frustration on her. Apparently the Lord allowed all of this in order once again to prove the strength of Matushka's faith and the depth of her humility. She herself said, "It is just a test. Let the Lord test my heart." Schemanun Macaria endured not a little from her neighbor. She knew that one of them not only was initiated into the robbers' scheme, but even sent them himself. In late July of 1988, one of the domestics accidentally overheard the neighbor saying, "As soon as the priest leaves, we will break in." They told Matushka about this. How my heart burdened like a fire, she told me. I felt bad, very bad, but I prayed the whole time to God. Literally feeling, or rather foreseeing, she said, "It will be bad for this place when they have risen up against me. The Mother of God herself placed me here." After some silence, she continued, "We will pray." "Last night was frightful, very frightful," she said afterwards, "but the Lord had mercy on me for my prayers." Why is she attacked like this time and time again, I wondered. But apparently this is par for the course. In mid-June 1988, Schemanun Macaria received healing again of a very serious illness and was able to war with the spirits of darkness to the fullest extent. Apparently it was precisely in this respect that the evil one especially attacked the ascetic in order to destroy her emotional peace and to weaken the power of her prayer. During the day, Mother Macaria knew no peace from the people who came to visit her, neither from her caretakers, and at night she tirelessly fought with the enemy forces. "You want to pray fervently, but he, the devil, ruins it," she explained. I heard many times how she drove the devil away from herself. One day he approached her. She was at the time seriously ill, but spiritually strong, and he tempted her. "You black gypsy, unwashed and dirty, I'll have revenge on you." "Go away," she said, chasing him away. "Why did you come? I'm not afraid of you. I'll beat you so hard with my prayer rope you'll flip over backwards." Another night I heard, "Go away, you fool." In the morning I asked her who she was driving away. "The hairy one," was her reply. Yet a third time I, and Abbot Donatus, who was staying at Matushka's, heard it. That evening Matushka lay eating rye rusks. Suddenly she became very concentrated and sternly ordered some unseen person, "Go away, go away, go away, you scoundrel." Naturally we saw no one. For in order for one to feel the proximity of the spirits of darkness, one must himself be light. When the devil throws but one thought of any kind into a bright and pure soul, it immediately evokes disturbance, heaviness, and pain of heart. 2. Grave illness from a caregiver. Sorcerers brought great temptations upon Schemanun Macaria. Sorcery is practiced when someone has come to hate his neighbor and, wishing to harm him, either sends the unclean spirits himself through black magic or turns to a professional sorcerer for this purpose. They came to take revenge on the physically helpless Schemanun, who many times saved unfortunate victims from their onerous spells. "They cast spells on those who get in their way," she said. "I get in their way, and they try to ruin me." "I will suffer all my life," Matushka said of herself. "I am on the cross. The Lord God has a cross such as no one can carry." Truly, the bedridden Mother Macaria, literally a helpless child, sacrificially fulfilled her podvig. One may look into my eyes, another pinches, yet another pats me, and I feel bad from all of this. She complained about those people who came to her with evil intentions. People also brought her foods that had been intentionally corrupted by sorcerers. If you would eat something brought to the house without Matushka's blessing, you would not know where to escape from the pain in your stomach, but you only had to drink some of Matushka's holy water and anoint yourself with the oil, and it would all pass right away. Therefore she always tried to warn us, boil the milk that the woman brought. If it is not corrupted, then there will be no blood, but if it is corrupted, there will be blood on the bottom. Sorcerers twice made it so that all the lampadas in the house went out, and the caregivers were not able to relight them. It was only thanks to the increased prayers of Archimandrite Hermogenes and Archpriest Alexander that they were again able to light the lampadas. I do not understand the workings of God's providence for Schemanun Macaria, and therefore I will not attempt to judge why the Lord once allowed an exceedingly difficult temptation which befell her late in the year 1986. At the persistent request of one archpriest, whose children grew up in Matushka's house, and he himself visited her many times with his wife, Matushka accepted as a caregiver one Alexandra. This woman was close to the priest's family and worked in this church as an altar attendant. Schemanun Macaria saw right away that this was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and warned her to renounce her unclean occupations. Alexandra, being a vain and envious person, hoped eventually to occupy a position of importance in the house. But Macaria, who had labored there for 20 years, did not want to allow this to come about and put Alexandra in her place. Alexandra lived in Schemanun Macaria's house for 2 years, and she had plenty to eat as well as plenty of money, but she simply did not want to give up her sorceress practices. Matushka was left with a difficult problem. If she were to refuse her services, the archpriest would be upset, for he had put great trust in his altar attendant. If she were to tell him like it is, he would not believe it and become offended, for he was a hot-tempered man. So she had to simply be patient and wait. Come what may, all is in God's hands. Thus Alexandra became an instrument of the devil's revenge. On December 11th, 1986, she cast a mortal spell on Matushka, then went home, taking with her the Schemanun's Ryasa, 2 of her Kassaks, and 5 apostolniks. I involuntarily thought to myself, why did Matushka go willingly to this torture? Would it not have been easier to simply send the sorceress away from the house? Immediately the following comparison occurred to me. Did not Saint Seraphim of Sarov do the same when he did not resist the robbers that fell upon him? He put his trust in God, humbly put himself in their hands, was beaten by them, but miraculously remained alive. Saint Seraphim and Schemanun Macaria only fulfilled the Saviour's words, "He that endures to the end shall be saved." Matthew 10:22. Matushka released to us the story of this misfortune. Alexandra made my legs, through sorcery, to stand upright, and they swung around, but the bones cracked. I was frightened, but they, the domestics, just walked around laughing. From that moment, Matushka experienced such pain in her body that she was not able to sit or to lie down, and she could not even turn herself over. She was left to just lie there and die in dreadful torment. "My woeful life, I can't even turn myself over," she said sorrowfully. "Now I am stuck. I can't turn from side to side," she lamented. "This will not soon pass. I need to have the prayer of exorcism read over me, but there isn't any such person nearby who could do that." It was painful to see how difficult it was for her to simply rise up a little or to turn over on the bed, and she could not be touched, for she painfully reacted to the least movement. "Now my life is no longer interesting, for if I turn from one side to another for 1/2 hour," she said, "my pain increases. This is a fierce spell, and that is why I do not eat. Don't force me, or I will cry." There, the sorceress's illness is very hard to bear. Only I can bear it. Despite her suffering, Matushka never held a grudge against the altar attendant Alexandra. "I forgive her everything," Matushka said. "I feel very sorry for her." The Schemanun felt sorry for her mainly because the woman had destroyed her own soul by involving herself in the demonic realm. Matushka bore this grievous illness for over a year, before the Lord led a remarkable priest and intercessor, Father Michael, to her house, and she was healed by his intercessions. But this is related in another chapter. 3. Temptations from the caregivers. For concentrated prayer, one must have peace and quiet, but this is just what Schemanun Macaria always lacked during the last years of her life. Saint Athanasius the Great wrote that the demons have sown discord between people from way back, so that they, being occupied with mutual struggle, would not turn their hatred upon them. Such a struggle took place between the caregivers for the right to take anything of quality from what was sent to Matushka. "Manyusha, where have you been?" she once asked her caregiver. "I have been in the terrace sorting. There are many cookies and pretzels," she answered. "We should tear down the terrace," Matushka said woefully. "They have made a mouse matokian out of it. I could find where to give it all away." "Don't take anything, Manyushka. Don't take anything from people. Some of them, in their need, are giving their very last," she told me with great compunction. "They only think about what they can haul away from here. They don't need me at all." The caregivers were paid a salary from the money that was brought comparable at the time with that of a professor. But even this did not satisfy them. Even if you were to pour them out a barrel of gold, they would not be grateful, Matushka complained. They therefore willfully took money under any pretext. For example, they would say it was for safekeeping, for future home repairs. Of course, that money would never return. Things from around the house would also disappear. One would take a blanket brought to Matushka, another bedclothes, a third would take the samovar or cloth given for a cassock. At first I thought that only the altar attendant Alexandra behaved strangely in that house, but the caregiver Irina once told me a story to which two other visiting women, Evdokia and Mother Maria, had become witnesses. The caregiver Valentina was offended with her replacement, Irina, over something and went home one night in a huff. That night the caregiver Zenaida cried out loudly in her sleep. It seemed to her that Valentina was reaching out to grab her by the neck, but couldn't. "Go away, leave me alone," Zenaida cried in horror. All those who were in the house awoke and heard Matushka pronounce with authority, "Get out, you naughty old woman." Immediately all was quiet. Zenaida no longer felt the presence of Valentina's spirit. Sin has a beginning but no end. The flame of the caregiver's sins was fanned hotter and hotter by the demons who tempted them and augmented their passions. The demons can obtain energy through a man, increasing their own energy through the man's passions, gobbling up his life force. A passionate and sin-loving man is literally plastered with demons. It was bitter to see how the demonized caregivers would destroy the ascetic's peace. "You can't say anything to them, or they will rise up and howl," Matushka said. Valentina, in particular, would make a scandal so often and so fiercely that Matushka's visitors ran away from her wherever they could. Schemanun Macaria, however, had nowhere to hide. At times she would say, "Why is she screaming? She has plundered my entire soul." When peace reigned temporarily in the house, Mother Macaria said, "After all, one should respect people who have come into contact with divinity." She asked me, "You aren't sick yet?" You can't get sick from her words alone. Mother Macaria suffered from her total dependency upon Maria and Valentina. As she understood it, she just had to be silent. All she had to do was to object to something they did, and they would begin to scream. "I don't like this house. It is defiled," she lamented. I did not understand at the time that her home had been defiled by its very inhabitants, namely the caregivers. One day Matushka warned Zenaida when she was feeling poorly, "When I tell you run, you must run without thinking about it. The sorcerers will not let you work here." And to me she said, "My heart is in great pain. It is as they, the dwellers of heaven, told me. You may again get sick because they, sorcerers, do not give up. They go on and on, little by little." I suppose that the evil one had a strong hold on these women's souls through love of money, and the women did everything they could to separate from Matushka those people who did not please them. They even strove to increase Matushka's dependence upon them. "I must die anyway," she said. "The Mother of God will not leave me with such people." Maria and Valentina insisted that there be 2 shifts of caregivers in the house, consisting of 2 people each, and lasting no longer than a month. They claimed that they grew very tired after a month of work, but this was only half true. The caregivers were tired primarily from tending the animals that they kept there mainly for their own use: a pig, sheep, goats, and chickens. Besides this, the more often the women could go home, the more goods they could carry off with them. A God-fearing woman found it almost impossible to stay there, and Matushka did not wish to take in a bad one. Meanwhile, Maria and Valentina demanded that someone be hired. "And what does Gennady say?" Matushka once asked unexpectedly when the caregivers pressed her. "He says that we should obey you in everything," Valentina exclaimed. "May I cry today?" she asked me, and I understood the bitterness of her situation, that there was no one around her who was kind and loyal. But as for these, no matter what you do for them, they will not be grateful. They have no obedience in them, not even an understanding of obedience, only great pride, and this is a disaster," she observed sadly. "I am not the mistress here. They don't obey me. They just say, 'Don't argue.'" It was in this wise that Matushka shared her misgivings with me. No one in the world sees these troubles, but Matushka is very sad at heart. After some silence, she added, "I told you that my heart is exceedingly heavy. Probably I will get terribly sick. I wish that Father Michael would come. Later I will tell of Archpriest Michael's participation, but now I will merely note that in late 1987, thanks to his fervent prayers, over the course of many months, the mortal illness that the caregiver had brought upon Matushka subsided. A little while after Matushka's dark forebodings, the young priest Nicholas came to her quite worried. I was visiting Matushka at that time. He told her how the Mother of God appeared to him in a dream and said, 'Go to Matushka so that they won't find her another Alexandra.' Then came a letter addressed to Matushka from Schema Abbot Anthony, a man of elevated ascetic life. The letter read, 'Macaria, be vigilant. The winged lightning, it flies.' When I heard these words, I immediately remembered the folk sayings and stories about demons that took on the appearance of fiery snakes, and I decided that we must be prepared for the worst. No matter how hard Father Nicholas and I tried to prevent the new caregiver Pelagia from joining the household, we were unable to do so. 'Whatever happens, you can't get around it,' the caregiver Maria yelled categorically. 'But we won't live here all the time.' So they took on Pelagia as a helper without even asking Matushka's permission. Diminutive, quick with cunning eyes, this woman had recently retired from her job as painter on construction sites. One of the sick people who came to Matushka spotted her in church and took her to Matushka's house. They directed her to tend the animals. There was nothing left for Mother Macaria to do but humble down. But she warned them right away that Pelagia must not step over the threshold of her room. She told me secretly, 'This Pelagia has neither goodness nor mercy. Be aware, Pelagia is bad. This polka will sow 3 ills.' It was hard for me to hear these words, and I tried to reason with Maria that it was not right to take on a bad person. But again she only shouted, 'Whatever happens, you can't get around it. I am going to rest nonetheless.' I lived in Schemanun Macaria's house with a bird's rights, and the caregivers could have kicked me out at any moment. Father Nicholas and I agreed not to leave Matushka alone, and to live literally in her house for as long as Pelagia was there. I took a vacation first, and left for Temkino for nearly a month. Maria and Valentina went home, and Matushka was left with Zinaida, Pelagia, and me. One day, after evening prayers, in accordance with the usual custom, Schemanun Macaria sang the prayer, 'O fervent intercessor.' We sang along quietly. When she finished singing, Matushka asked, 'Isn't that right?' Meaning, was it sung well? 'Yes, it was good,' Pelagia answered hurriedly. Matushka was silent, then asked the same question. 'Yes, yes, it was good,' Pelagia repeated. 'And who said that?' Matushka asked. 'Pelagia,' the same one answered again. Suddenly, the Schemanun, covering her face with her hands, sobbed bitterly. My heart constricted from her weeping, and I could not move from that spot. 'I am weeping over Pelagia. I feel so sorry for her,' she said, after she had calmed down a bit. Having been silent a while, she added, 'It is necessary.' The 3 of us gathered together only at prayers and at the dinner table. I kept an eye on Pelagia when she was in the house, but I was good-willed and responsive toward her. Thus the situation at home did not appear to be forced. One day, over dinner, Pelagia told us about her native village. Suddenly, the conversation turned to the village sorcerers and their deeds. That conversation fell deeply into my soul. Zinaida rubbed some holy oil on Matushka's back for the night. Matushka announced unexpectedly, 'It must be some kind of mockery. No matter how you rub, it hurts. Someone is practicing black magic.' I noticed that while Matushka was being rubbed with the holy oil, Pelagia always sat where she could see the Eldress. She looked tensely in Matushka's direction. There was nothing left for me to do but to invite Pelagia to sit on the couch. I engaged her in all possible conversation while Matushka was being rubbed. Soon I heard from Matushka, 'If someone other than Pelagia were tending the animals, then the kid would not have been stillborn.' My vacation came to an end. All 3 of us left for our own homes. I was triumphant. I had succeeded in averting disaster this time. When I came to see Matushka again, I saw that Pelagia had settled into none other than Matushka's room, regardless of the sanction against it, for Maria and Valentina supported her in every way. One more month with Pelagia came to an end. Again she was given money and groceries and conducted to the door. No sooner than she stepped out the door than her mischief began to reveal itself, one example after another. "We are going to have to part with Pelagia," Schemanun, Macaria said. "See what a worker she is. She has taken the milk away from the goats." Then she said decisively, "She's a sorceress. That is why the goats have been producing so little milk." I immediately recalled how burdened Pelagia was with tending the animals, and how she had cursed the innocent creatures. Maria and Valentina, as interested parties, could not forgive Pelagia for corrupting the animals, and would no longer let her into the house. "Gennady," Matushka addressed me, "do you see someone sitting around on the back of the bed? Probably Pelagia left her friend here. I haven't seen it before." She pointed to the back of the bed when Archimandrite Gurius came and asked, "Do you see?" "I don't see anything," he answered her. "That circle, for several days now someone has been turning in that circle." The Schemanun explained. Eventually new demons came, which Matushka named spinners, because of their restless behavior. Meanwhile, Matushka's life became more difficult and tense. "They rattle terribly," she complained. "I have no peace. They run around at night. I sit and pray, and they crawl under the bed. But I don't hear anything," I said. "You would wake up and not get back to sleep. Their thunder is not threatening. I am not afraid of them. They are timid. As soon as I yell, 'Where have you hidden?' 'Well then, get out of here,' they step back. All the same, they are just big-eyed exiles from heaven." One day the Schemanun told me in detail about the evil spirits with which she had to carry on unseen warfare. They are bodiless, small, black in appearance. Some are without horns, but the males have horns. Their heads are large. They are hairy, ugly, repulsive, ungodly. They can enter a person, but they fear prayer. They knock and whistle, hiss and whir, and they rob one's energy. Saint Anthony the Great wrote that when the demons are unable to captivate the heart of the ascetic with openly impure desires, then they attack him in another form, namely by creating various apparitions in order to frighten him. That is why they take on different appearances. This is how cunningly a new temptation made its way into Schemanun Macaria's house. We, glory be to God, did not see these demons, and it was not easy for us to believe her words. It is hard to imagine the full horror of such a sight, about which St. John Chrysostom wrote, "How many are the demons that fly about the air? How many opposing forces? If God were to allow them to show us their frightful and repugnant visages, we would go insane." Our coarse material perception served us as a saving wall, which guarded us from seeing the evil spirits that continually flash before Schemanun Macaria's eyes. The Lord preserved us, for the evil spirits act destructively upon a person's will, sap his strength and life force, his ability to withstand them. They paralyze even activity itself. "You don't know what I have, no strength, not even a little. I can't say the Theotokos and Virgin prayer more than 1.5 times in the morning and evening. If they would drive these demons away from me, I would resurrect." Matushka told me sorrowfully, "They sort of take my energy away." For the physically weak Schemanun Macaria, a great deal of force was necessary in order to withstand this demonic attack. "They spin, bother me, spit on me, look into the water during sanctification. At what they pour in there," Matushka complained. "They throw something around. Watch that they don't sprinkle me. They might sprinkle something into my eyes." 4. Death of a caregiver. Schemanun Macaria's living conditions in her own home were getting worse and worse. The caregiver Maria awaited Matushka's death with impatience. She blurted it out on several occasions. She wanted very much to take over the house, not for herself, for she had no children, but for her niece, whom she had raised after the death of her sister. But Matushka wouldn't die, and she reproached them. "You have no faith whatsoever. You never even cross your forehead. You have stored up all manner of goods, but there isn't a particle of divinity in your souls. Nothing, empty." To me she would lament, "Manya, Maria, doesn't know how best to stamp me into the grave," but I told her, "After all, you are going to die before me." Schema Archimandrite Macarius gave me one message for Schemanun Macaria, that the evil one himself is sneaking up on her. To this she calmly replied, "He is already here." At Maria's insistence, a new assistant was brought into the house, Tatiana. She was a little over 60 years old, strong, red-headed, freckle-faced, with red, inflamed eyes. The moment they brought her into the house, Matushka immediately said to her, "If you know something, that is, if you know sorcery, go away, I don't need you." Maria immediately began to scold Matushka, saying that nothing pleased her. Thus Tatiana remained in the house. All she had to do was to touch Schemanun Macaria's hand, and it would be in pain, and then the other hand began to ache. Claudia, the older one, who was visiting the house, reproached Tatiana for something, and she suddenly fell ill, so badly that she had to be taken home. Maria said some rude words to Tatiana, and got so sick that she couldn't sleep lying down. She had to ask that someone come right away from Moscow to get her. No matter how hard Matushka tried to convince her that she could only get well in Temkino, she did not even want to hear it. In Moscow, the daily weakening Maria, who had never been sick in her life, hoped to recover, but could she know that a period had been placed at the end of her 24-year stay in Schemanun Macaria's house, and she would never return there again? She had only a few days left to live. Matushka prayed fervently to the Heavenly Queen to protect her home from unkind visitors. The Sovereign Lady replied, "She will be staved off by my cross and will leave herself." When the Schemanun asked her to cast out the spinner demons from her house, she received this advice: "Don't be afraid of them, kick them out." I pondered much over the fact that the Lord allowed these temptations, and I have found an answer in the writings of St. John Chrysostom. It appears, he writes, this occurs in order that the ascetic would know that he had been made much stronger than the demons, so that he would be made thereby firmer and stronger, so that he would possess clear instructions concerning the treasures entrusted to him, for the devil would not approach you if he did not see in you some high degree of honor. 5. Deliverance from illness. He that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, and he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man's reward. Matthew 10:41. 1. Father Michael. Now as I have promised, I shall tell of Archpriest Michael. I was introduced to him long before I came to the house of Schemanun Macaria. One young hieromonk, with whom I was acquainted even before his tonsure into monasticism, told me of the gifts of grace that had been granted to this priest. The hieromonk wanted very much for me to appear before the archpriest's clairvoyant gaze. Then I did not yet know that when one comes to such people for spiritual advice, one must come with complete trust and readiness to accept his words. Only then can one receive some benefit. I went that day to see Father Michael more out of curiosity than anything else. Up until then I had read a great deal about such people, and I dreamed of seeing even one of them in person. So there we were in Father Michael's tiny room. From the floor to the ceiling stood bookshelves filled with books, mostly of spiritual content. Later I learned that Father Michael had a doctorate in theology and was preparing several theological books for publication, which were then as yet unpublished. He looked me attentively in the eye, and I felt that he saw right through me. He was 70 years old, not very tall, thin, with a great silver-gray beard. He had a bright face and beaming eyes that were slightly squinting. It seemed to me that I had met him somewhere before, but where? He was simply very similar in appearance to the Optina elders. The hand with which he blessed me seemed straight out of an icon. I saw before me a remarkable Russian priest, of the kind that had been numerous in Holy Russia, marked by the abundant grace of the Holy Spirit. We spoke long that day. I left displeased with our conversation. It turned out that everything I had been doing with great force of will during those years was not pleasing to God. I would not change 1 hour of my life or throw away what seemed to be necessary beginnings. But Father Michael was thinking only of the most important thing, the salvation of my soul. In conclusion, he suggested, "I will pray that God would reveal his will for you." It was difficult for me to agree to this, for in knowing God's will for me, I would be expected to fulfill it from beginning to end. At the time, I was not ready for this. When Father Michael learned that I had not read the Bible through to the end, he gave me a deadline, 1 year. "If you need anything," he said, "call me." My daily business and cares did not allow me any opportunity to read the entire Bible, and therefore I could not make up my mind to call Father Michael, although I thought of him often and even told my close friends about him. Several years passed. Another opportunity arose to meet with Father Michael in December of 1986. Schemanun Macaria fell ill. The Lord led me to Father's house. I told Father Michael about the Eldress's mortal illness and asked him to pray for her. It turned out that Father Michael had heard about Schemanun Macaria and, incidentally, how she had been harmed by the altar attendant Alexandra. That I turned to him for help does not indicate the spiritual weakness of one or strength of the other. It is rather an inclination of the ascetic woman's humility before the will of God and the priest's compassion for her. From that day on, I called Father Michael regularly after my trips to Temkino, or I went to his home to tell him in detail about Matushka's condition. After asking me to bring Father Michael to her so that he could serve her Holy Communion, so on July 2nd, 1987, we set off in an automobile on the long journey. When we saw Schemanun Macaria, Father Michael understood what a difficult podvig she was performing. He saw the great labor of love, complete forgiveness, humility, and mercy, as well as its being conducted unnoticed. Himself having endured much suffering in life and having reached great spiritual heights, he fell to his knees before Schemanun Macaria and made a prostration with the words, "I bow down before your suffering, Matushka." Tears shone in his eyes. When Matushka was being prepared to receive the holy gifts, and she, barely able to move, was being dressed in her mantilla and schema, Father Michael stepped over to the beautiful corner, as if to look at the icons. He crossed himself, prayed a little wordlessly, then turned to Matushka, who was in her garb. His face was shining. He served her communion with remarkable reverence, kneeling as he did it. Afterwards he said, "Now, Matushka, we will serve a little Maleben with an akathis to the Savior." He said this because he saw the Schemanun's fatigue and wanted to let her rest as soon as possible. But she, seeing before her such a grace-bearing righteous man, so close to her in spirit, did not want to part with him so quickly, and so she said with a smile, "What is that, a little Maleben? I never heard of that one." Father Michael served the Maleben according to the Kiev Caves rule, and I and Vadim, the chauffeur, sang along with him fervently. I saw with what intense spiritual and physical power he served. After blessing the waters, he thoroughly sprinkled the entire house, and then gave everyone to drink. When we approached the cross to kiss it, he sprinkled us exuberantly. That day he looked like St. John of Kronstadt. After the Maleben, Father Michael again came to the Schemanun and asked her if she had been sick long. The Schemanun readily told him about her difficult life. "I have been praying intensively for you, Matushka, for the past month," he said. "I know your rule, and I am always with you," she said to him, smiling. Father Michael also talked about himself, how on the eve of the war, he, then a young student, was arrested for organizing a Bible study group and put in prison. He was in exile and prisons for nearly 15 years. They parted like the closest of old spiritual friends. Mother Macaria was unspeakably pleased, and after this meeting she cleaved in spirit even more strongly to Father Michael. Afterwards she told me how gentle Father Michael is. I was not the least afraid of him. He is rich in mercy. He has the most grace of all, of those clergymen who previously came to her. I have come to love Father Michael exceedingly. He is very orthodox, very faithful, very godly. He loves God very much. God is dearer than anything to him. Literally reading his thoughts, Schemanun Macaria said, "Father Michael is a great elder, a great pillar from earth to heaven. He was the first one to bow down before my suffering. No one else has ever done that." Schemanun Macaria's prayer connection with Father Michael was exceedingly strong. She prayed especially hard for him, and he in turn prayed that God would ease her suffering. These prayers had their result. "Glory to thee, O Lord," Matushka said. "At least now I have patience. Before I had no patience. I would yell when you just came near. Now it is much better. May the Lord grant him a throne for that," meaning in the kingdom of heaven. "Now at least I can sit up." I shuddered like a blade of grass, enduring such strong torment. She always recalled Father Michael with great warmth. I love Father Michael very strongly. I wish I could never part with him. Another time she said, "I wish I could get a look at him even if it were with just one eye. Would that Father Michael would come quickly." When she learned of his serious illness, she said, "I pray for him to the Lord and the Mother of God. I wish that he would get well soon. If he weren't sick, he would have come. You see, such a man, a divine pillar, and we make him do such trifles," she said, justifying him. "Father Michael is very godly. One can't live without such people, but we aren't capable of honoring him as is meet." These last words she spoke as if about herself, but I understood them to be addressed to me, for I had turned to Father Michael after returning from Temkino, when his prayerful aid was needed right away. I rushed headlong for him when Pelagia had moved into Matushka's house. I anxiously asked him to prepare for the journey. We had decided then that he could come and serve Matushka communion, serve a moleben with a blessing of the waters, and at the same time remove Pelagia, who was working more and more mischief with her sorcery. We wanted to take the old caregiver Maria at the same time to Moscow, so that she would understand that there are many more fish in the sea. At that time there was a bitter frost, but we decided to leave in one day, that is on January 24th, 1988. Father Michael took along 2 elderly women. One of them, Maria, had been a doctor, and she might have been helpful. After the blessing of the waters, Father Michael, according to custom, gave us the cross to venerate, and at the same time sprinkled us with holy water. He told Pelagia and Maria, "Get ready, you are coming with us. You need to rest. They will work here in your place." Maria had a number of times yelled at Matushka that she was tormented and was going home at the end of her term no matter what. These words were entirely unexpected by Maria, but she very quickly assessed the situation and said that she could not leave until the next shift had come. As for Pelagia, let Matushka decide herself, she said. "I didn't hire her, and I won't send her away," Schemanun Macaria said. Thus we had to leave without accomplishing anything. "Matushka, Father Michael is very frustrated," I let out. Her question as to when he would return remained unanswered. In the car on the way home, Father Michael could not restrain his vexation, and said that he would never again leave for the village in such a hurry. I did not know how to explain Matushka's behavior. All of my well-intended labors did not bring the desired result. I agonized for 2 days. Matushka's behavior had me perplexed. But after the second day it all became clear. Of course, being under the gun, Matushka made a wise move. After all, neither of those 2 women who had come with us could have carried on the rough agrarian work that had to be done there, stoke the oven and prepare food in it for people, as well as the boiled feed for animals, feed the animals, carry a lot of water from the well, meet and conduct visitors. All of this required some experience and habit. Realizing this, I went to Father Michael right away and asked him not to be angry with Schemanun Macaria. On the 3rd of February, I went again to see her. Thank God, I told her, that although not right away, at least after 2 days, I understood that it could not have worked without resulting in some temptation. I felt that Matushka was praying the whole time, and by her prayers the temptation dispersed itself. She smiled with satisfaction and confirmed the truth of my words. "But why couldn't Father Michael appreciate all that when it was happening?" I asked, perplexed. "I don't judge such pillars," she answered. After many days, she said, "He is touchy from his trying experiences. He has suffered much and could get upset over nothing, but getting angry with me is like getting angry with a corpse. I am sick, shut up in prison. Only in prison they give a term, but I have no term." Father Michael did not go to Schemanun Macaria's for almost 6 months, but she waited for him the whole time. She said humbly, "I will wait for my lamp. He will pray to the Lord. He'll deliver me, for I am completely tormented. He knows how to pray with result. It is a great mystery. He will save me." Finally, the much-awaited day arrived, June 10th, 1988. We arrived at a moment when Zenaida was home alone, and Valentina had gone to rinse out the doormats. I reminded Zenaida of our prior agreement that they wait outside so that Mother Macaria could be alone with Father Michael. Zenaida left the house with great reluctance, and I closed the latch on the door just in case. It is hard to convey with what spiritual intensity Father Michael read the prayers over Schemanun Macaria from his large book. He asked me to hold it for him. At first his face became covered with light moisture, and then great drops of sweat rolled down it. Matushka, covered with his priestly epitrachelion, like a little lamb, humbly waited for her deliverance. Valentina was already trying to break through the door, but the prayer did not cease for even a second. One eyewitness told us how Valentina, running from the house, began to scream wildly, then ran into the shed, fell down, and rocked along the ground, shrieking. When the reading stopped, I opened the door and invited everyone into the house. The rabid Valentina flew into the room. Her eyes were unnaturally protruded, and there was foam on her lips. She lunged at Father Michael with her fists. He stood there with complete inner concentration, holding a tiny chalice containing the holy mysteries of Christ, with which he was about to commune Mother Macaria. Valentina suddenly softened, her fists relaxed, and she stepped back. Shouting something else, she ran out of the house, saying that she was leaving right away for home and would never return. Father Michael served Matushka Holy Communion, then he gave her divine unction. This all took another 2 hours. He regretted later that he was unable to really finish, since Valentina, Zinaida, and a woman from Vyazma, Ekaterina, a former medic, had all entered the room. Outside it was pouring rain. Flashes of lightning lit up the leaden-gray sky, and rolling thunder seemed to shake the entire underheaven. "Get ready, we're leaving," Father Michael commanded. I went to Matushka and told her, "Father Michael wants me to go with him." "It would be better if you stayed," she said softly, almost pleading. "He will be very offended." "Well, then go." "How will I come to see you now?" I asked her. My heart stopped as I recalled Valentina's rage. "You will come just as you always have," she replied. We walked in the rain along the rural street in muddy water mixed with clay, stepping along the emerald islands of grass. We were soaked to the bone, and water sloshed on our boots. "Why did such terrible thunder begin?" I asked Father Michael. "The demons are taking revenge on us because Matushka has been delivered from a vicious illness." But the demons were not the only ones to take revenge. I was later told how all 3 of the women began to yell at Mother Macaria, saying that it was they who lifted her out of the dirt, that without them she would be lost. Matushka humbly held her peace. 1 month later, Matushka told me how she was feeling. "I feel much better now." As soon as Father Michael went out the door, I felt relief, as if some heavy weight dropped off my shoulders. Now I feel like some baroness of old. "Why?" I asked. "Because there was no relief in sight, but now I am arising, and glory to thee, O Lord." Then she added, reflecting, "Where can you find such people today, who really know how to pray to God?" "Now my body is not in pain," she said a month later. "Before my back, my stomach, and my hands ached, but since he was here that time, I have felt no pain." Later, when I came to see Mother Macaria, she would always ask me about Father Michael. When she talked about him, I could see that she knew much more about him than I did, who saw him frequently. I told her how attentively he listened to my detailed information on my trips to Temkino, and how he reflected on it. Matushka added, "I don't need anything. I just wish that he would keep if only one eye on me. I feel so sorry for Father Michael. He has become so frail. Thanks to him for all he's done." I was always stunned by her humility. I never heard a single murmur leave her lips against God that she had been sent so much suffering. The thought often came to my mind, all it takes is one illness, some discomfort, and immediately doubt arises about the Lord, that he has abandoned us, forgotten us. No, we healthy, physically strong, and successful people are nonetheless weak-souled, and cannot be compared to the frail, constantly beset upon by all, Schemanun Macaria. 6. Surrounded by enemies. "Verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country." Luke 4:24. "For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them." Matthew 13:15. 1. Troubles in Temkino. The righteous Schemanun lived for nearly 50 years in Temkino. When I was young, I prayed very hard to God, fearing that they would send me away from Temkino, she recalled, for she had nowhere else to go. But God only knows all that I have come to see, how many tears I have shed. That is how my life is in Temkino. I am constantly tormented. These words surprised me. One would think that her fellow villagers would be honored to live near such a righteous woman. But such a life, history knows many such examples, when neighbors threw stones at God's prophets. I remember one conversation that Matushka had with Hieromonk Panteleimon, who came to serve her communion. I, Father, have not been outside the house for 9 years now, she told him. You should look out the window, the hieromonk advised her. I don't want to look out the window. It's too sad, she said bitterly. Don't you have any believers in your village? No, Father, she said. Then, after a pause, added, They really hate me here. This hatred burned hotter and hotter in the hearts of her neighbors. It sprang from envy, for people came to see Matushka from everywhere, and they always tried to bring her something good to eat. They set their gifts on the table in hopes that she would eat what they brought her, but as soon as the visitors stepped out the door, all of their gifts were immediately carried off by the caregivers. Any fruit was quickly packed into baskets and shoved under the bed. There they were often forgotten and came out onto the table only on rare occasions. But the goats, sheep, and pigs all knew very well the taste not only of domestic fruits, but also of the imported. Mother Macaria had no authority over all of this. Only money made its way into her hands. 10, 5, 3-ruble notes. My dear one, she said to one woman, don't try to bring me money. It will only be stolen. The hay is paid for. My animals are well fed. Don't do it, my dear one. For Christ's sake, try to bring less money. The money people brought was used to pay the caregivers, the shepherd, the laborers who chopped the wood. It paid for the hay and the milk, and it was used to thank the priests who came to serve her Holy Communion, and the choirs that came with them. She gave donations to churches, helped the needy, dowries were provided, and homes furnished. It would be impossible to enumerate everything. I loan it without any return, she said to some petitioners in my presence. I thought at the time that this is just as Christ commanded us to do, Luke 6:34 through 35. Some people even had the following tradition, to take a bag and go to Matushka, knowing that they would bring it home full of food. But of course she could not provide the whole village with food, and this evoked envy. The villagers are a hateful lot, she explained. This house needs a tough individual. They don't stop plaguing me. It is a cruel village. I have been to a number of pillaged churches and monasteries in my time. I noted with what zeal at times the crazed pillagers would search out church treasures, overturning the holy tables and destroying wood-burning ovens. Matushka's neighbors similarly thought that she had amassed money, seen and unseen, but she, pointing to her humble cassock made of the cheapest cotton, said, All my youth, middle age, and old age were spent in such cassocks. It is only in old age that I have begun to take wool ones, which are warmer. Nevertheless, those neighbors who judged Schemanun Macaria went even so far as to accuse her of selling all the water from the spring. But when the water stopped flowing through the pipe and the spring needed repairs, they all came to Matushka. She then hired laborers to fix it. Now they wash their dirty laundry near the spring and bring in all sorts of dirt, and you can't say anything about it. They have soiled me so badly, I would just as soon die today, she grieved. It is also true that there were some people who upheld good neighborly relations with Schemanun Macaria. They came to her more often to receive holy water and oil for themselves, their relatives, and close ones. She received them joyfully and had a lively interest in the village news, always helping out where she could. Her house stood out from all the other village houses. It was beautifully painted, compassed about by an even picket fence, and drowning in greenery and flowers. It created the impression that it was a little corner of paradise within the village. Quite often people who came to her for help for the first time had no trouble finding her house. This house is full of grace, hope in the Lord, a refuge of Christ, along the way, for God is with us. Matushka would often sing to her guests, You know, she said, this house was built not so much with money as with folk ingenuity. When they came to take out insurance, they said, Matushka, how clean and tidy it is in your yard. It's pleasant to come near it. I put every kopeck into this house. I don't want to shame Russia. I love Russia. Two miraculous icons. Those who entered the house of Schemanun Macaria were met by a large, full-length icon of the Holy Hierarch Nicholas. This icon had once been part of the fence in her neighbor's barnyard until she purchased it with 50 rubles. The board was covered with dirt and chicken manure. Matushka herself washed it off in the holy spring, then rubbed it with holy oil and began to pray to St. Nicholas that the icon would renew itself. A little time passed and the icon renewed itself, becoming so bright that it looked as though it had just been painted. Matushka placed it in the front room where they ate, so that everyone who came into the house would see this miraculous icon. There was one other wondrous icon in her house, the Iveron Mother of God. For a long time I noticed how the flame in the lampada burned unevenly and actually danced. I asked Matushka about it. She told me that this icon is also miracle working. 3. Dependence upon others. Mother Macaria's life in her own home had never been peaceful, and the last years of her life were simply joyless. The more she tried to attune her home spiritually, the more confusion, ill-wishers, and people bound up with unclean powers were brought in, defiling her habitation. Father Michael, on his second trip to see her, to serve her the holy mysteries, spoke to her sympathetically. Matushka, I pray particularly for you now, that you would not only be able to take care of yourself, but that you could stand on your own feet. Then we will see, perhaps you could move to Moscow. Father, if I could walk, I would walk right out of this house. Even if I had to walk for 5 months, I would leave. I don't like it here. But could those who lived with her allow this to happen? The worse she felt, the more stable it was for these people, for then she was entirely dependent upon them. She could neither drink a glass of water by herself, nor reach the chamber pot at night. When a person feels the pricking of his conscience, it seems that the voice of God is resounding in his soul, however quietly. But when the conscience is silent, this is what occurred then to me as I looked around at the environment in which poor Schemanun Macaria suffered. Oh, how I dislike my cottage now, she said once. I'll crawl away somewhere. I can't live here any longer. If only my legs could move, I would run away somewhere, she said bitterly more than once. But she was destined to live only there, with those people. She humbled herself before them until the very last moments of her life. Her podvig in Temkino was not yet finished. She labored day after day, visibly weakening, carrying her heavy life's cross. Notwithstanding her infirmity, she strove to limit herself in even the smallest things, so as not to burden anyone else. Matushka, should I bring you some scarves? I asked her, seeing that she would use paper napkins to clean herself. Paper can be used and then thrown into the fire. Then they don't have to wash anything. It was no small task for Matushka to wash herself, as she put it. When I was younger and had more energy, I would first climb onto the bench and then onto the bed. I could also climb down to the floor, but now she had to be lifted off the bed very carefully in order not to add to her agony. A specially made tin wash tub with low sides was placed near the oven. They would spread a blanket upon the floor and undress her down to her gown on top of it. If she had the strength, she would climb into the tub. Her old friend Evdokia would always come from Kaluga to wash her. She would stay in the house for several days, waiting for a convenient occasion to wash Matushka. Meanwhile, she would help around the house any way she could, but she never took so much as a kopeck. She worked for bread and salt. Schemanun Macaria ate very little, and only when her illness allowed her to eat at all. She primarily took dry prosphora, ground it into tiny pieces like sugar. At night they left a cup of them on the table for her, and she strengthened herself with them. I stood on my knees and prayed, Mother of God, bless me to eat some prosphora. She made the sign of the cross on my forehead. She told me one morning, her main food was bread. I, Matushka, would say, Mother of God, will there be bread? I like it very much. There will be, the Mother of God answered me. I pray to the Lord that he would give us bread. I like there to be plenty of bread, she told us, remembering her cold, hungry childhood. She continued, well, at least there will be bread. People who came to Matushka brought her oranges, mandarins, or apples. They would peel them for her and leave them in pieces in a cup on the table. Even so, from the year 1988 on, she refused all of this, even Prospera, and ate only rye bread dried in the Russian oven. She often gave these rusks to us also, to take on the road. The flavor of these rusks was somehow extraordinary. I once told Matushka about this after dinner. Thank you, Matushka, for feeding us, but your rusks are the tastiest part. I asked the Lord, she said, quite pleased, and he blessed them. Not once in my life have I overeaten. I never hankered after any kind of food. Whatever they gave me was fine. I am not finicky, she told me. The cooks would fix her sour cabbage or potato soup, fried potatoes or boiled kasha, but she always returned nearly the full amount of whatever they gave her in the small bowl. She would take 3 or 4 teaspoons, drink a small cup of tea, and would eat no more. You could not get her to eat delicacies for anything. This is tasty enough for me, she would say as she would refuse anything else. I don't like sweets. Being with the Lord God is sweet. When the Lord comes near, it is like honey coming from him. Schemanun Macaria was very hearty. I like the cold and cold weather, she would say, and ask to be brought some freezing cold water from the spring, no matter if it be a hot summer day or midwinter. I just want to cool my heart. There is such a heat in there. When in 1988 she began to weaken noticeably, one of her contemporaries, the ascetic Archimandrite John, sent a message to Schemanun Macaria that she must take some clear chicken broth every day with her rusks, and then she would get stronger. I would not let chicken broth pass my lips, she refused categorically. Even if you tell me that I'll otherwise die tomorrow, I still won't eat it. I am forbidden. I don't want to offend the Mother of God. But even with such modest requirements, Matushka was often unable to eat and drink on time. Velka, Valentina, when will you have some mercy on me? I would like to drink some holy water, she would ask. It would happen that she would wait for them to feed her. Mashenka, Maria, don't you have anything to revive me? Crumble a little bread into a cup and pour some milk over it. I need to be fed, because I am going to pray all night. Or another time, Velechka, ask Mashenka to get a fresh cucumber and shred it. When I have one, I'll give it to you. That evening, when someone actually did bring her some cucumbers, the caregiver shredded one small plateful for her, but no more. Sometimes it would happen that the Schemanun would ask to be fed, but the caregiver would be in no hurry. She has a habit, Matushka explained to me. When I ask for something to eat, she says, wait a minute, I need to feed the pig. If it weren't for the pig, I don't think she would ever climb down from the stove. She was speaking of Maria. After all, I am a sick person. She'll give me a sip of something, and I won't be able to swallow it. Other times I don't eat anything for 3 days, she said as if in justification. She drank but a tiny cup of milk. A Schemanun shouldn't drink it often, only on Saturdays and Sundays. She always kept the fast very strictly and was very demanding of herself. 5. Protect this little child. After Maria's death, Valentina felt empowered as the head mistress of the house and strove to have the entire household submit to her. When the frequent scandals she provoked did not help her to achieve this, she began to have recourse to other tricks. People began to notice that all she had to do was to place her hand on someone's back, and that person would lose strength and could barely put one foot in front of the other. At age 70, she was built like a wrestler, tall and strong, and would lift an entire bale of hay on a pitchfork. Whenever Valentina began her shift, Mother Macaria would start to vomit. She would embrace the Schemanun, and the latter would complain afterwards, I ache all over. I can't even lie on my side. Tell that to Father Michael. Valya has been making mischief. If she is acting up, what good can we expect from her? Tell him one could die from her. They are all unsuitable. And tell him also that I am waiting for him to come every minute. But Father Michael could not come to Temkino. He has grown weak. Why should we force him? He is forced enough as it is, she said sadly. Father Michael is not the bright sun. He can't warm everyone. and truly, as if she saw his every move, she told me how hard he works and how people beset him with their own needs. Now Father Michael could no longer pray for Schemanun Macaria as he used to. Tell him this, Matushka requested, that she, Matushka, is very sick. If he can't come while she is alive, let him come when she has died. May he at least stand well near the coffin. You see, I will die soon. With a light sadness, she added, only at my grave will he realize whom he has lost. Schemanun Macaria bore her illness patiently, you could even say heroically. The Lord has given me sufferings higher than grace, she told me. Such sufferings aren't given to anyone else, but I suffer and don't even know for whom. How I ache, all my bones, my sinews, my fingernails, everything hurts. But nevertheless I always fulfill my duty, and all night last night I prayed with my prayer rope. Someone saw Matushka in a dream. She was sitting on her feet, in which there were 2 nails. This is an illness from 2 people, she later explained. She prayed for whole nights at a time, and sanctified water and oil, always sitting on her legs. It was more comfortable that way. She couldn't hang them off the bed or stretch them out, for they did not straighten. To the disease of her legs were added new infirmities. My head hurts very much, she complained. I touched some incense to her head, and it burned. This would happen mostly after receiving a large number of visitors. My stomach and chest ache badly, she said. How hard it is for me, how burdensome. I would be happy to lie down for even 1 hour. Now it's as if dogs were tearing me. It would be easier to pass through the eye of a needle than for me to get well, concluded Schemanun Macaria.